Hey, what's up everyone? Pastor Brian here. Glad you're joining us in your community group. We're going to be jumping into a new series for the next 4 weeks or so. And before we do, I just want to ask you a question. I want you to discuss it in your group, okay? What's the funniest or most awkward moment you've seen or experienced? So like I said, we're starting a new series that's going to span about 4 weeks or so. And the name of this series is a word that most junior hires not only know, but they use a lot. It's called awkward. If you're anything like me, you've experienced some pretty awkward situations in your life, like up to this point, right? So here's the thing, I'm going to give you a few examples. And I want you to tell me if they're awkward or not. So when I say them, say it out loud in your group. Be like, yeah, that's awkward. Or if it's not, be like, nah, that's not awkward. Okay, here we go. Seeing a teacher when you're out to dinner with your family. Tripping when you're going from one class to the other. Your dad telling cringy dad jokes when your friends are over. The human growth and development unit that you go over in junior high. Accidentally responding to the wrong group chat that was meant for like a friend, but then it ended up going to a bunch of people instead. When someone has something in their teeth, but you're just too embarrassed to tell them. Waving at someone who you thought was waving at you, but they totally weren't. They were waving at someone behind you. When you're at dinner with your family and you're squeezing some ketchup onto your plate and it makes like the biggest fart noise. These situations are awkward, right? They're cringy. They're like super uncomfortable, and sometimes they feel embarrassing. And because of that, they make us feel awkward too. And I think for most of us, awkward moments are something that we try to avoid. Well, for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be diving into a series called Awkward. And in it, we're going to lean into one of the things that probably tops your list of awkward stuff. We're going to be talking about attraction and sexual desires. Yes, that's right. We're going to spend 4 weeks talking about sex here at church. Awkward, right? While you might feel weird or uncomfortable or strange or even awkward talking about things like sex, let me assure you that you're not alone. In fact, those feelings are normal, and even though it might be easier to avoid the awkward moments of having to hear the word sex or sexual desires at church, we believe that it's the place to have conversations like this because we care about you and want to help you understand what this stuff means for you, even if it might be a little awkward along the way. So take a moment in your community group. What is one word, action, or gift to describe how it feels when something awkward happens? Now, there are a few words that are going to come up pretty frequently in this series. And so I want to start by getting on the same page about what those words mean. First, let's talk about attraction. When I say attraction, I mean a feeling of liking or being interested in someone or something. You're also going to hear me mention sexual desires throughout this series. And here's what I mean by that. The word desire simply means a strong feeling of wanting to have or do something. And when I talk about sexual desires, I'm talking about sexual things we feel, sexual things that we think about or that we want to do. So let me give you some examples of what all these words might sort of look like, okay? So when you think someone is really, really cute, or when you want to sit next to someone because you just want to be near them. Or when you get that nervous feeling in your stomach when you talk to a certain somebody. Or when you think about that person you like all the time when you're not with them. Or when that person sends you a DM or snaps you a cute picture of themselves. Or when you have a desire to express your feelings through kissing or touching. Or when you think about doing things beyond kissing or touching someone that you're attracted to. Or when you're tempted to look at pictures you find attractive. All of that stuff, they're examples of desires that you may be experiencing in junior high. And here's the thing about that. Having this kind of attraction or these kinds of desires is both normal and natural. In fact, God actually gave us the ability to experience that kind of attraction and desire. We're going to be talking about attraction and desires over the next few weeks. And here's what I want you to know right away. This isn't easy, okay? I get it. Sometimes the stuff we see or hear makes us feel awkward, or maybe we want to know more. Maybe we're curious, but we've never talked about it before because we're not sure if it's even okay to talk about it. Or maybe we don't like talking about it because we don't understand. After all, we might not even be experiencing attraction or desires. We may not have a lot of interest in things like dating and sex, and that's okay. Here's why it's so important for us to talk about this stuff here at church. Attraction and desires are not bad things. They're not. And being curious and having questions about them is not wrong either. It's not something we have to be embarrassed or feel awkward about. In fact, it's actually part of the way we were designed. See, we were all created by God to experience attraction and have sexual desires. We were made to express our desires in ways that are good, in ways that are loving and natural. That nervous or exciting feeling you get when you like someone, or when your hand actually accidentally bumps against theirs, or even when you just think about them, like that's good, that's normal, that's how you were created to feel. The problem comes when we're not sure how to respond to those desires or how to even talk about them with someone else. But trust me, there is an answer. There's a specific plan that God created for attraction and sexual desires. And even if it's awkward, I want to talk about it today because it's something I really want you to understand. So take a moment in your community group and discuss these 4 questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, how awkward do you feel talking about desires and attraction? What's one reason talking about this kind of stuff might be awkward for a junior hire? What's one reason it might be helpful for a junior hire to talk about this stuff? How does it make you feel to know that God created things like desires and attraction? God actually cares a lot about our attractions and desires. And people who really loved God wrote down all kinds of stuff about sex, about relationships, about desires, and how we use our bodies. And we can find all of that in the Bible. Today, we're going to take a look at some wise advice about sexual desires written down by a really important guy named Paul. You see, Paul wrote a lot of the books in the New Testament, which is the part of the Bible that talks about Jesus' life and what happened after Jesus died and came back to life again. And you see, these books were written by Paul as letters. They were originally letters to churches throughout the area. And Paul wrote them to help people understand how to live and how to follow Jesus together. See, following Jesus was a new thing back then. And because of that, people needed help figuring it out. And Paul was really good at helping them see what mattered to God and what should matter to those who follow him as a result. And honestly, I think we'd all say that we need that kind of help still today, right? That's why I think we can turn to Paul's words to help us understand a little bit more about what we're supposed to do with our God-given desires. So take a look with me at Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. Paul writes this: "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." Now, I know that's a lot in just 2 verses. So let's break it down. You see, Paul started off by talking about who God is. God is someone who offers us mercy. And you see, mercy simply means getting compassion and kindness when you don't deserve it. Like, think about when your teacher doesn't take points off your homework for being late, even though those are the rules. She's showing you mercy by not giving you the bad grade that you deserve. Now, because we're human, we all mess up sometimes. We make mistakes and wrong decisions that don't always line up with what God has in mind for us. We end up choosing to do things that we want instead of the best that God wants for us. And you see, that's called sin. And because of sin, we all deserve to be separated from God. But instead, God had mercy on us, and he sent Jesus to save us and bring us back into relationship with him. You see, that is the ultimate act of mercy. And Paul was saying that because God has been merciful to us, we can know that he is kind to us. And that means that we can trust him when he tells us the best way to live. We can respond to what God has done for us, that being his kindness to us, by living the way he calls us to live. He wants us to live with integrity. And you see, integrity means doing the right thing in all circumstances, even if no one is watching. And when it comes to our sexual desires, he wants us to live with sexual integrity. That means choosing to respond to the sexual things that we feel, that we think, that we desire in a way that respects ourselves, respects others, and respects God. See, Paul explained that we should use our sexual desires in ways that are pleasing to God. It's not that we are supposed to get rid of or ignore our desires. It's natural to have them. But we should respond to our desires in ways that are good and pleasing and honorable to God, to ourselves, and to others. You see, that is sexual integrity. And God designed sex as a way for a married couple to connect with each other on a deeper level. It's a way to express their love for each other. And when we set boundaries and respect others and ourselves, we're choosing to honor God's plan for sex. In other words, what we do with our sexual desires matters. Sounds great, right? Like, respond to your desires in ways that are good and pleasing to God. Honor God with your desires, no problem, right? Choose sexual integrity, got it. Well, not so fast. You see, it's one thing to read verses like this and hear messages about God's good plan for our desires, but it's another to actually know what it looks like to live it out on a daily basis. When we find ourselves curious to watch that YouTube clip, or interested in holding hands with that new kid at school, or drawn in by those pictures on Snapchat, or we're just curious about the ways our bodies are changing, then what do we do? How do we actually respond in a way that honors God? Well, I want you to take a moment and look back at Paul's letter again. You see, he wrote at the end, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." You see, we can start by renewing or changing our minds. We can ask God to show us his plan for our desires. We can ask him to change the way we see it, to understand it better, to notice how it's impacting our lives. And we can trust his good plan because it's good. So what does it look like when somebody has integrity? And why does sexual integrity matter? See, when it comes to all this attraction stuff, God is actually for you. The way he asks us to honor him with our desires is actually a good thing. He wants to help us express our desires in ways that are healthy and positive for us and for others. And when we start by changing our minds and asking God to help us see it as he does, we'll be better able to pay attention. We'll be better able to notice when our responses to those desires are off. And we'll be better able to notice when someone else is encouraging or even forcing us to act in a way that doesn't fit with what we know God wants for us when it comes to sex and our sexual desires. In fact, I want to pause here to say that there may be some of you in this room who feel like the choice has been taken away from you. Maybe you've been shown pictures or videos that you didn't want to see. You didn't ask to see them, and you're confused. It made you feel things you weren't sure about or even ready for, and it's maybe even something you feel a lot of guilt about. Look, if that's you, let me just say that, first off, that's not your fault. Okay, that's not your fault. And I just want to remind you that it's never too late to choose sexual integrity for yourself. The choice is still yours, no matter what has happened in the past. And someone like your community group leader would be a great person to talk about some of the things you may be feeling right now. Or maybe you've experienced sexual abuse or harassment. Look, if that's you, I'm really sorry. I truly am. And what's been done to you, it's not your fault. What's been done to you does not impact your sexual integrity. Okay? Something that has been done to you does not determine if you are honoring yourself, others, or God with your own desires. So if that's something you're dealing with, I'd love to encourage you to talk to your community group leader about it. You see, they want to make sure that you get the help that you deserve. Because for everyone in this room, the truth is this: God loves you. He truly does. He created you to experience attraction and desires, and what you do with your desires matters. So what can we do to make sure what we do with our desires matters? Well, here are a few thoughts, a few steps you could take. First off, you can choose sexual integrity. Remember, sexual integrity is choosing to respond to the sexual things we feel, we think, and desire in a way that respects ourselves, respects others, and respects God. And you have a chance right now to set a standard for yourself for how you're going to respond to your desires. You get to decide what you're going to wear. You get to decide what you're going to post. You get to decide what you're going to forward. You get to decide what you're going to act on. You get to decide what you're going to look at, what you're going to think about. And maybe up until now, you found yourself not choosing sexual integrity. Maybe you've made decisions that haven't honored God with your desires, or maybe you've even found yourself in a situation that you didn't expect or that you didn't ask for. Situations that you weren't ready for and didn't seek out for yourself. For any of us, the good news is that no matter what you've chosen or dealt with in the past, we can always begin to choose sexual integrity today. Number 2, pay attention. You know, God has a plan when it comes to your desires. And God designed sex as a way for a married couple to connect with each other on a deeper level. It's a way to express their love for one another. So when you hear or you see something that doesn't match up to that plan, pay attention. Notice things that push you or tempt you to not honor yourself, others, or God with your desires. And number 3, talk about sexual desires in positive and appropriate ways with adults that you trust. They can help you set healthy boundaries and are a safe place to process struggles or questions that you have about this stuff. You see, your community group leader doesn't claim to be the expert on this topic, but I promise they have more wisdom and insight than you think. And besides that, they love you, they care about you, and they want what's best for you when it comes to sex and to sexual desires. Okay, so was that as awkward as you thought it was going to be? I hope not, because the truth is we want you to feel safe, to have conversations about things like attraction and sexual desires here at church. It's one of the reasons we created community groups, to connect you with other people you can trust, to encourage you to honor God with your desires. And it's why you have a community group leader who wants to help you figure out how to live and receive God's best for your life. So last discussion in your group, besides your community group leader, who is another adult in your life you trust who you can talk to about this? Okay, so we're going to end our time together doing a little activity. Your community group leader should have some pens and paper available, and there should be something for you to put those paper slips into. So what you're going to do, if you have any questions at all around this topic, I want you to write them down. Don't put your name. We want to keep this anonymous, okay? But if you have any questions, please write it down on that slip of paper and put it into that box. And your community group leader is going to get that to me. And if I see sort of like multiple people who have the same question, I'm going to do my best to address it over the next couple weeks. And if you don't have a question, that's perfectly fine. But here's what I would like you to do. I still want you to write. I want you to write, "I don't have a question." Simple, right? And throw that in the box, and your community group leader will get that to me. And before you go, I want to encourage you as a group, just pray together. Okay, so what are the good things God is doing in your life that we can celebrate? How do you need God's help? Like, we serve a mighty God who can do incredible things. So how do you need him to bring help to whatever situation you're going through? And lastly, be praying for your oikos. So if you need a new oikos card, we can get you one. But it's important that you're praying for them daily. and then ask God to open up opportunities for you to share your faith with them. So that's all I got for you. Real quick before you go, last thing, it's actually an announcement. If you're a young lady in junior high, then we want to invite you to an event that Tiana is putting on. It's essentially like a galentines, okay? We're gonna have details for you below, but essentially it's gonna be a time to hang out, junior high and high school girls together. We'll be here at the church. There will be food, there'll be some activities planned, but it's a time just to be together. And so I want to encourage you to participate in that. Now there is like a registration. I believe the deadline is this Sunday. So I want to encourage you to jump on it because once it closes, it closes. But it's going to be a super fun event. I hope you can make it. But nonetheless, we hope to see you next week. Take care.